our first panel discussion is up next, Student and Emerging Artist Short Form Presentations with our moderator, Elizabeth Walton. And so this short form is following this format called Pecha Kucha, where we have a group of presenters. You get 20 slides, 20 seconds, and they're automated, and you just have to race through, and then the next person will come up. And it's a great way to fit in a group of people into a quick, short amount of time and get a lot of different information. And so, like I said, our moderator is Elizabeth Walton. She received her BFA from Appalachian State University. Her work, she's a jewelry designer, and her work is represented by Mora Design in Asheville, Maya Gallery in Weaverville, the Bascom Center for Visual Arts in Highlands, and she recently became a member of the Southern Highland Craft Guild, works as a studio assistant to multiple artists, and runs her own metalsmithing studio practice named Red Wren Jewelry, and has recently become the outreach director for the Southern Highlands Craft Guild. So let's give a warm welcome to Elizabeth and the...
Hey, thank you so much, Mike. I'm gonna hold this. Thank you, Mike. And is this on? Nope. Grand. Good morning. Thank you so much, Mike, and thank you all for being here this morning. Yeah, I'm really excited to share this panel of 5 local and regional student and emerging artists, and like Mike explained the format, it'll be pretty fast-paced, so we're just going to get right into it. First up, we're going to have Maggie McKenzie.
It's on? Oh my God. Hello. Thank you for having me. I don't like public speaking, but we'll see how it goes. Wait.
There's cool.
Oh, okay. So, a little background information. This is a picture of my family currently. My lovely 2 parents. I was adopted, by the way, and so was my sister. 3 lovely dogs. We are quite fond of dogs. Oh, sorry.
I'm just going to put this down.
Great. Thank you. You're welcome. Okay, there we go. And then, so some background. In high school, I didn't do anything other than JROTC, which was a whole lot of fun. Got to be a part of a team, and we marched together, and I didn't do anything art-related, which is fine. I attended Appalachian State, and I wanted to pursue industrial design. Industrial design is basically anything product related to like the seat you're sitting on, this microphone, the computer, pretty much everything around you is industrial design related. And okay. So here's some of my work that I did freshman year. Some of it involved learning the basics of drawing and some CAD work. We had to learn how to render and basically model 3D things and reverse engineer things as we went on. Here's some of my favorite projects that I did in junior year. So we took model making, which basically gave us the ability to make with our hands and not so digitally. And then we had assignments in our studio classes, which required us to work with an outside company. They gave us a prompt, and then we hopefully filled that prompt. Learning more about CAD, so we learned several different CAD programs, Rhino and SolidWorks. It just depends on what you do. More industry leans towards SolidWorks and AutoCAD. So we learned SolidWorks, and then we did a studio project with Kickerland. In my senior year, I kind of got burnt out, but then I forgot I was taking 17 credit hours, which is towards the max number of credit hours you can take. So we had to make a project from start to finish for launching on Kickstarter. And then I was also taking human factors class. And then spring semester, which was a fun time, towards the end, working on my capstone, taking photography, which was a nice, relaxing class. And then I signed up for my first metals class, which was a whirlwind and so much fun. I got addicted to metalsmithing just a little bit. and this ended up being my first project in metalsmithing. The class was separated, so we actually only had like 15 classes out of the whole semester. So I spent a lot of extra time in the studio, and this is basically a pocket watch type of thing. This ended up being, I stayed another semester because I was like, okay, I'll just stay one more semester, take another metals class, and it'll be out of my system. And yeah, that was not accurate. This is an egg beater. This is an egg beater that ended up making, so that was a lot of fun. Got to learn some casting. I stayed another semester. Basically, we're just going semester by semester, and that's how it ended up going. This is a series of metal spinning tops. As a kid, I played with Beyblades, and this ended up being like a more adult version. That was like, yes, I want to do something that's more fun and playful. And then I took enameling, which in that same semester, and I made a little tiny cabinet. I like furniture, but I'm horrible with wood because it's not very forgiving and it's heavy. So this ended up being a small cabinet that I had an idea that I wanted to make. So it has enamel on top. Spring semester, metal forming, my favorite class. Oh my gosh. So it's basically taking an idea of taking a flat sheet of material and manipulating it and creating 3D volumetric forms. This funnel that was supposed to be a sample, but I just elongated and turned it into a little bit more complex and simple funnel. Oh, okay, teapot. This was also in metal forming. Oh golly, that was a great time. Also a stressful time. The red part is actually different sheets of copper that are together and TIG welded, covered in powder coat, which is like kind of on industrial products. And then, okay, still another teapot, making still the same principle, flat sheets, form a 3D form. And then we did some CNC milling with the help of Frankie Flood, great professor. And yeah, we did some more casting, so that was a fun time. And it held together with micro bolts on the handle. This was my first attempt at TIG welding. Not the best at it. Kind of melted a few pieces, but it's okay. It turned out all right. And then, so the base and the handle are CNC milled and held together with 3 micro bolts to hold the main body. The body has a little fin that goes through the handle that's held together. Took a casting class the following semester, so now I'm in like 2 years deep into metalsmithing. And critiques are rough, so I had fun doing critiques because they're emotionally and interesting intellectually. And yeah, tissue box, hearing aid, and magnifying glass. And this ended up being my final semester. I didn't know what to do because I'm just indecisive as a person. So I took a Dixie cup and I made a whole bunch of forms surrounding a Dixie cup. So in theory, you have the functionality of a Dixie cup without worrying about the materials that touch your lips. So yeah, okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. That was great. Next up, we have Emily Shibley.
Hello everyone, my name is Emily Shibley and I'm currently a senior at Warren Wilson College. In May, I'll be graduating with my BA in Art and English, and my art concentration is in printmaking, which is most of what I'll be talking about today, but in English I self-designed a folklore concentration. So I grew up in Miami, Florida, and I first tried printmaking in 2021. I fell in love with the very involved process of intaglio, which has stuck with me. I also want to mention that my folklore interest is very relevant to my visual work. Almost every printmaking piece I make is an exploration of one specific story or concept from folklore. So the first piece I wanted to share with you is the largest intaglio piece I've made. It's 12 by 12 inches, and it was one of my first pieces that explored one specific story from the Brothers Grimm. The story is called The Singing Bone, and my title is a translation of the Latin text in the image, "Let peace be had, let justice be done." So I used a combination of line etching and aqua tint, and I used soft ground to create the lace texture in the corners of the piece. On the right, you can see the inked and wiped copper plate right before I put it through the press to pull a print. And again, the process of intaglio is very significant to me, and I lean into that as much as possible. And these are the first etchings I made from 2021. And before my interest landed on the Brothers Grimm, I was making a lot of work inspired by Greek mythology. I usually choose to twist or change something about a story or reframe it through a different perspective. And here I changed the gender of Orpheus into a woman, Orphea. This piece explored the story of Ariadne and Theseus. Ariadne assisted Theseus in his journey through the labyrinth by giving him a ball of magical thread that would lead him back out of the labyrinth. Here, I just changed the framing of that narrative. Ariadne is the one with the power here, and she is the one saving Theseus. So this was my first lino cut at Wilson. While I tend to lean toward intaglio, relief is also a big part of my practice. This piece was for an editorial illustration assignment, and I chose an article about the civil war in Lebanon. My dad is from Beirut, Lebanon, so this piece involved a lot of learning and understanding more about that part of my heritage. And here is my most recent lino cut called To Eve. This was an exploration of the curious woman archetype, which I'll describe later, but it was also a commentary on the distinctions we make between religion and mythology. Not a judgment of truth on either side, but a question of what drives us to make these distinctions. And this is one of my current works in progress on the topic of Rapunzel. So when I'm working on a printmaking piece, I'm most concerned with the process of printmaking rather than the initial drawing process. So I often plan my pieces digitally, which you're seeing here, and this makes it easier to make edits, reverse the image back and forth, etc. And here are my first proofs and an image of one of the plates. This will include 3 plates printed vertically on one sheet of paper, and all 3 together are about 3 inches wide by 20 inches tall. So I'm playing with scale to create that sense of a tall Rapunzel tower. And this is also my first time shaping a plate in that arch shape. And switching gears a bit, I've also been exploring illustration. I consider most of my work illustrative in nature, but here is an example of a project I did just for the sake of illustration. I really enjoyed the process of drafting different options and then carrying it through with gouache, and I'm hoping to pursue more book illustration projects. And here are a couple of greeting cards I also illustrated. These cards in that last book cover were me kind of leaning into a more children's book illustration style, and that's a direction I would love to go in with this section of my work. The ornamental borders and sweet-looking animal characters are my favorite parts of making these illustrations. And switching gears once again, last summer I attended Aramont for a week on the Wingate Fellowship. I took a workshop called Research and Play in Monoprint and Monotype, which was taught by Kalina Stasiak. And here are a couple of the pieces I made in that week using a process called stencil monoprint. It was a really inspiring experience, which resulted in me making as many prints as I could in the 1-week class. Normally, my practice involves a lot of time, planning, and research, but this was a good challenge for me, and I ended up with a lot of work and themes that I could have never come to otherwise, as well as a new printmaking method. So heading towards the end of my presentation, I'm going to share a couple more prints. This one was finished a little over a year ago, and it's my largest lino cut I've made. Its title is Curious Woman, Curious Girl, Apple, Jar, Spindle, and it was an exploration of this female archetype found in folklore and storytelling called the Curious Woman. And some of these women that you're probably familiar with include Eve and Pandora. It's the concept that there are these women who are presented with specific instructions on what not to do, but their curiosity gets the better of them, and this results in chaos for the rest of their world. This piece was my argument that Sleeping Beauty and her spindle are an example of this archetype. And lastly, I'd like to share another work in progress that I'm working on. Since the beginning of this semester, I've been learning the basics of stone lithography with Jessica White. Here are some pictures from when I was still graining that stone. And I really wanted to try working on a stone and to have a lithograph in my senior capstone project. And this piece is about a Brothers Grimm story called The Youth Who Went Forth to Learn What Fear Was. This is another case of me changing the gender of a character into a woman to explore one of the realities of being a woman that was important to me. The story itself is comical, and it's telling this tale of a man who cannot feel fear, so he sets forth to learn how to do that. And the working title for my piece is The Girl Who Went Forth to Forget What Fear Was. So I asked myself the question, what would this story be like if a woman was the protagonist? And the answer was it couldn't have been a woman, because from my perspective, fear and anxiety is a given of womanhood, and I wanted to say that with this piece. So that stone has been successfully etched, and now it's time to print it. I'll be posting the final piece on my Instagram, so feel free to follow me there. And then after I graduate in May, I'm hoping to document the next steps of my artistic career online as well. So thank you so much for being here and listening today.
Thank you. Thank you, Emily. Next up, we have Laura Lau Klein.
Okay, great. All right, my name is Laura Lau Klein. I am a jeweler and interdisciplinary artist living in West Asheville. I feel so grateful to be able to call this place and this craft community my home, and am excited for the opportunity to introduce you all to my work. My work is predominantly focused on the human role within the natural world and how the materials we use to create art impact that role. My greatest inspiration thus far comes from quiet moments spent in the woods noticing, and from learning about ecology and the shapes and structures of life. My work is informed by my consideration for materials. This consideration comes from my background as a painter, basket weaver, natural dyer, and wood artist. All practices where I'm closely engaged with what I make my art with. This curiosity for materials carries over into my jewelry, where I merge metals and repurposed wood with vintage beads and found objects, elevating components perceived as worthless or discardable into valuable, timeless objects drives my curiosity and can be seen in some of the pieces above. My inspiration from patterns and occurrences in the natural world also informs how I choose components for my jewelry. It is important that my materials reflect how I cherish the relationship between people and place, and this leads me to use repurposed wood in designs such as the ochre hoop shown above. Bic Dibber ladle is another really fun development in repurposed wood design. For this piece, the ladle bowl is cold forged sterling silver with a cherry wood handle that is inlaid with silver wire, and I charred the wood with a torch to create this deep black that contrasts with the silver flecks to evoke thoughts of the night sky. My wooden hoops are one of my core production pieces. This particular pair of hoops was made out of Osage orange I got as offcuts from a woodworker. Using offcuts and scrap wood allows me to offer a staple piece of jewelry made out of a repurposed material that would otherwise be discarded. I love making these hoops because they take me away from the bench and get me on the lathe. As an interdisciplinary artist, it feels important for me to be able to switch it up and use different skills and challenge myself with other techniques, especially when I'm getting really comfortable and used to being at the jeweler's bench. I also incorporate recycled metals as much as possible into my work, such as in these rhythm hoops. They're made with recycled silver. The silver was etched, pierced, and fused with 24 karat gold to create a repeating pattern and rhythm within the design. Etching also appears in my leaf vein hoop earrings, which are printed using an ink resist applied to a leaf and then pressed onto the surface of the metal. The metal is then etched with the leaf pattern. This is just one of my many pieces that requires direct engagement with the natural world. I have to go outside and get a leaf to create the surface design with. Another example of this direct engagement is stone and structure. This piece is an exploration in contrast of the human role within the natural world. The organic raw river stones and the rectilinear refined sterling silver frame. I gathered the river stones for these pieces from any one of the many creeks in the area. The Wilt collection incorporates direct engagement of the natural world through casting organic material. Above, you can see a photograph of a ghost pipe I gathered in the woods. Ghost pipes are a flowering plant that grow without sunlight, It is very cool. And in the above pair of earrings, you can see that I use this same plant. These are some images of the casting process. I won't go into great detail because it is an involved process, but basically anything you can sculpt from wax that melts away or organic material that can burn away can be recreated in metal. In the central image, you could see the same plant material that those earrings were made out of. Here are another pair of earrings that came from that same ghost pipe and that same casting process. Something I love about casting is the malleability of the media. You can ask metal to do all of these wiggly, bendy, organic moves that otherwise would be challenging to achieve. Casting also lends itself beautifully to making multiples and alterations of a common form. So here you can see a necklace as well as a ring made from the same castings as the two previous pairs of earrings. A similar form, but with different uses. I used this same technique with the cell post earrings. Making multiples again allowed me to take this cell form and play with different variations. I first sculpted the cell out of wax, and the first designs to be born from that sculpture were this pair of posts. For reproducing this form, I sculpted it in wax and cast that wax in bronze and made a mold of the bronze. The center image is an example of the mold for making multiples, but this mold was used for a different design. The last image shows that same mold injected with wax to make multiples. I then took this first simple post earring and further developed the design by altering the wax to make it asymmetrical, fusing gold to the surface, and deepening the patina to really blacken the metal. Another subtle stud earring from the same original form. I then let this cell form develop into the organism earrings seen above. These are inspired by single-cell organisms and the many different shapes and structures life forms can take. These earrings include the same basic form, but now with Herkimer diamonds and check glass beads. Thank you so much for coming and engaging with me, my work, and this craft community. Most of my work I've shared with you I've made in the past year and a half while as a student at Haywood Community College in their professional crafts program. Our graduation is May 11th, and the exhibition will be held upstairs. So if you're available, please come. I'd love to see you there, and it will be on display through the entirety of the summer. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lau. Next up, please welcome Hannah Gambino.
Hello everyone, good morning. My name is Hannah Gambino, otherwise known as Goblin Milk, the moniker I work under. I live in Hendersonville, North Carolina, but graduated from the University of North Carolina, Asheville in December of 2022. I have a BA with K-12 licensure, concentration in painting. And these are my works on the table if you'd like to take a look. I create abstract expressionist paintings and pottery, charming altered wheel-thrown forms, whimsical ceramic sculptures, and original character block prints. The name Goblin Milk comes from a lifetime of being a nerd, interested in fantasy and imaginative creatures, and an inside joke now that I've discovered I'm lactose intolerant. Abstract expressionism is a style I resonate with throughout my work, as the emotion I feel is channeled into the vessel of art I create and my movements. When in moments of manic, I let flow naturally. My recent paintings are reflective of grieving my father's sudden death in 2016. They are representative of the cycle of life and death, including rebirth and destined fate, incorporating imagery of animals, flowers, sentimental jewelry, and iconography. Boiling down images to simple shapes and marks leave them purposely unresolved, as I also feel. Throughout this period of my life, coming to grasp with years of emotional repression and explosion thereafter, I started to find an interest in clay while working on my Fine Arts Associate's degree at AB Tech in 2018. This would build over the years into a passion and commitment to the craft that became a positive emotional outlet, beginning to find joy in moving forward. Art is often an outlet, even without intention. This has been something my students over the years have expressed and that I experienced firsthand. As I've worked with people of all ages, one thing seems consistent: clay is grounding. There is something about the physicality of earth and allowing yourself to play, diving straight into the medium with your hands, that draws back to simplicity. For those that I teach, I always make a point that the experience is greater than the result, and if the result does not make you happy, you will learn from failures. Failure is a necessity. With clay, you can see the mistakes, and there are multiple ways to get to the same ending. It teaches patience, because with patience comes with learning. The more that someone works with clay, the better they become at it. This gentle approach and willingness and understanding of the craft directly relates to how we can approach ourselves with willingness and softness. My current practice has grown into what it is now through this thought, and I've needed to give myself this grace in order to continue. It is the indomitable human spirit, and it just so happens to appear as little animals. I create with the theme of critter. If you aren't familiar, a critter is a kind of living animal in the literal sense, but also refers to people of a certain kind. With an emphasis on this word, I enjoy creating little fellers to be around. Many of them are not a specific animal, but can fully lean towards one as perceived by an individual. They are ambiguous, like emotions we keep veiled, though that impacts little. A sweet, usually playful critter is present regardless, and I relate. I was raised in the poor South to a Southern mother from Stanley, North Carolina, with roots in Western North Carolina, and a Northern Italian-American father from Queens, New York. Can you tell? I have resonated with these critters, feeling like something a little different and thought differently of. As my papa, I'm sure endearingly, would call me, queer, while he hit the nail on the head. Surrounded by my Southern upbringing, it's from mouths like these that I would hear these words often. My work often shows at face value, but translates my grief of familial loss and tragedy into something that brings physicality to the joy and simplicity that animals, colors, and lines bring. I express conversation between my inner child to the adult navigating, leading to intersection of representation and whimsy. My desire to feel part of an unconditional love and belonging, a consistent soft and calm, reminiscent of an idealized childhood without trauma, lingers in my creation. In my ceramic process, I start by creating sketches of whatever shape and critter face that comes to mind, but then allow the details to shift as I see fit in the moment. Right now, I create signature critters consistently: puppy bears, known by their protruding round snout and nose; puppies, known by their long mouth and tongue or eyebrows; and kitties, known by their wide mouth and whiskers or teeth. Often they are designed in primary colors, with the sketchbook planning even colored in crayon to fully engage the feeling of play. I sketch the design straight onto leather-hard clay with pencil to finalize the placement and then decorate with underglaze. In some designs, I plan layers of underglaze to carve through after brushing on wax resist to inlay line work in another color, not disturbing the layers underneath. It depends on the critter. I fire to cone 04 bisque and decide one interior glaze that best matches the color scheme on the outside. The exterior remains clear glaze to see the underglaze decoration underneath. Sometimes I draw with underglaze crayon on bisqueware to further the theme. I have started to work on hidden message vessels with short snippets of my thoughts as I work in that moment, included on my forms, that I feel really encapsulate the stream of consciousness. These can resonate swiftly with some and others not at all, which is part of the experience. I create with the intent to connect. For the past 2 years, I have focused on my ceramic craft and teaching at Odyssey Clayworks as a studio assistant and class instructor. I'm also an after-school clubs teacher for K-3 Art Club, K-6 Clay Club, and 4-6 Art Club for a school in Swannanoa, North Carolina, actively engaging our youth in a range of mediums, styles, and artists, and encouraging their autonomy and creativity. Since January of this year, I have taken on the role of studio manager at the Glassman Clay Studio in Hendersonville, North Carolina, eager to build a strong foundation for our community to engage in the artistry as well as the play of clay. We currently have a number of classes available and are excited to be able to provide more soon. I create ceramic jewelry, prints, and stickers of similar critter theme that can be found at Foundation Studios, Odyssey Clayworks, Hartwell Raleigh, and any markets I advertise pop-ups for, alongside my functional and sculptural ceramic works. I'm eager to create more to share with the community soon. So keep an eye out. My name is Hannah Gambino, and I'm a little critter, making little critters out of clay. My works are posted on my Instagram often at Art by Goblin Milk, as well as on my site, goblinmilk.art. Thank you so much for your time with me today.
Thank you, Hannah. That was great. Next up, please welcome our last presenter, Leela Avruza.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Leela Avruza. I'm from Apex, North Carolina, close to the Raleigh area. I recently graduated May in 2023 from Appalachian State University with my BFA with a concentration in clay and ceramics. I wanted to show at least one image of my ceramic work. I really enjoy a lot of patterns, graffito work, really detailed, repetitive patterns. I work a lot in black and white and color. I enjoy slip casting as well as throne work. I experienced most of my college career during the pandemic, which really limited my studio access, and most of the work I create now is focused on paperwork because of its accessibility. These two pieces behind me were from my experimentations in middle school back in 2014 when I first started doing paper origami. I had a huge interest in origami because I was adopted from China at a young age and wasn't raised culturally Chinese. I explored parts of my culture through art, through media, and I found this type of origami called golden venture folding. Behind me are the instructions for how to fold the individual pieces. But golden venture folding is made up of these tiny little paper modules. The repetitive folding nature of it makes it so that you can make as many modules as you want and put them together to create these really fantastical sculptures. The method of golden venture folding also has a really deep, rich cultural history. In 1993, a ship called the Golden Venture ran aground outside of Rockaway Beach in New York. It held over 260 illegal Chinese immigrants that were coming over to illegally work. And when the ship ran aground during the night, many people jumped overboard because they were scared. Some drowned. The others were rescued and brought and sent to prisons in both New York and Philadelphia. And the Museum of Chinese in America created an exhibition in 2017 showcasing some of the work that those prisoners had made. They focused on this type of origami and created sculptures based off of like freedom. The eagle was a symbol that they repetitively used. So that's kind of the background history into my work, but I created these vessels out of this type of origami. I was focused on the repetitive nature, aspects of community, creating different vessel forms, kind of inspired by my ceramic background and my work in college. This series of 3 images that'll pop up on the screen were an ephemeral series I created where I made the first one out of 10,000 module pieces, and then after documenting it, I tore it apart and started the next one. And I did the same for all 3 of these pieces. It was kind of a test to see if I could, as an artist, be able to let go of my work and not hold on to it and put so much value into it, but also a chance for me to experiment and play with different forms, see kind of how the structure of paper can hold itself up and withstand the tension that the paper gives, playing with negative space, different structures. And then during my senior year, I started to incorporate a little bit of color. Most of the paper I use comes from recycling bins. The university library I stole a lot of paper from. The printing section always had misprints from students who would print out their homework. Got lots of friends and family to gift me paper whenever they had scraps. So a lot of the pieces I make, you can see some of the text or the images that were originally on the paper itself. And then I get into my blue and white series. My senior year, I was fascinated by doing more research into the traditional Chinese history of porcelain, the blue and white that you typically think of when you think of Chinese porcelain. I started incorporating some of those patterns, the colors, the forms, shapes, into my own work, researching the background of the silk trade as well as the history of porcelain. I found out that one of the porcelain capitals in China, Jingdezhen, the city is actually from the province that I was adopted from originally when I was in China. So I really loved that connection I was able to make to my own identity and history. So a lot of my senior BFA show, I went through history books, researching different porcelain forms, and then kind of seeing how I could replicate or resemble those forms into a paper structure rather than doing ceramic work. Part of that was because I didn't have as much access to kilns because of the pandemic. My studio access was very limited, but paper was the most accessible medium that I had. I was in the college dorms for all of 4 years, so I made use of what space I did have available to me. But I was really interested in these traditional forms as well as traditional patterns, bringing in aspects of the panty flowers as well as the blue and white organic patterning that's on some of these vessels. Right now, most 5 pieces of my blue and white work are currently in the Blowing Rock Art and History Museum. If you ever swing by the Blowing Rock Art and History Museum, you really should. They have an amazing paper pulp and bind exhibition going on right now with some really amazing Southern paper artists. But let's see, the largest piece I have on the screen right now is this bowl piece. That's a wall piece that I really enjoyed making. I was experimenting with scale, working with larger paper pieces than I usually do. So this piece is about 3 feet by 3 feet across, which is rather large. I've been working primarily within the 1 to 2 foot scale of my work, but I've been definitely playing around a lot more with color, scale, size. But if you are interested in following along with seeing more of my work on my Instagram, I would love it if you check it out through my website online. And thank you all for listening to me present.